Hey, Kim.
Hey, Chris, I was just dancing. I like the music that brought us in.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I think Ryan did a good job picking that out. We're excited to do an episode here of a live stream of building for digital equity. And so we welcome everyone who's watching now and in the future. Kim, I'm so glad you're able to join us. Tell all the many people who are watching now, an audience like you've never seen before, because
Oh, really?
this is not like the Connect This show where no one watches it. So this is where everyone watches it. Who are you, Kim?
I am Kim McKinley. I am the Chief Marketing Officer and Deputy Director of Utopia Fiber, currently the largest open access network based out of Utah.
And reporting live.
Reporting live from a hut in Arizona, just kind of coming down here to see some facilities. And I'm excited to be here. And I love digital equity, and I am excited to talk about it because I think it's a really important topic and part of a really big conversation that's being had nationally right now.
Excellent. I'm really excited that you were able to join us. I am Christopher Mitchell from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. I run the Community Broadband Networks program, and I have co-hosted the other two Building for Digital Equity events that we hosted in partnership with the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. We're going to do more of these events, hopefully in partnership with them, with you, with anyone who wants to do interesting work on digital equity around these events. The idea is that they are live, exciting, and we cover topics in a way that other people haven't. So, Kim, I want to thank you especially for sponsoring these episodes for the Building for Digital Equity. I also wanted to tease you a little bit. I just pulled this off of your website. Not really sure what's going on there, but as a chief marketing officer, I thought maybe you could tell me.
First of all, thank you for not prepping me for this question, but we like to use our own staff in our advertising. That is Becca, who works in our customer service department, and that is her son. We were out in Morgan, Utah, doing a photo shoot, and so we took this picture of how people can connect in some of the parks that we have Wi-Fi in. But yes, it's a little corny of a picture. Thank you, Chris. It is a tad cheesy. We're working on this.
That's so cool that it's someone on staff, though. And for people who aren't aware, Utopia is the nation's largest open access fiber network, and you work with many other communities in helping them understand what they should be thinking about, and have long been, I think, at the center of discussions about community networks, whether you wanted to or not.
No, I think, and I always love the discussion when you're talking about digital equity and why we feel at Utopia Fiber that municipalities or communities should be a part of this is because the first part of giving people solving digital equity is giving access to every resident in a particular community. And that is what, when communities build municipal broadband or whatnot, that is what one of their keystones of doing that is that they pass every house. Whether they sign up, it's a different story, and that's part of the discussion, but it is about passing every home so they have the option to sign up and give them a chance. So,
excellent. So we encourage people to use the hashtag B4DE, pound B4DE for Building for Digital Equity. And people can ask questions that way. We've got one or two people monitoring that, and they will either help out or pass it along to us.
And we have a lot of Arizona fans out there. I love this, how many people are watching from Arizona. No, it's a great state. But I do want to give you this, Chris, is I do like the B4DE. I think it's a very clever logo from a marketing person as well.
Oh, excellent. Yes. This is something that is new, and we're still, we're trying not to get too fancy. I'm afraid people won't take us seriously if we're too fancy, but I think it's wonderful as a logo. For people that want to know more about what this is, the items that we do under the Building for Digital Equity are generally items like events or soon a podcast series that are aimed at people who are a little bit newer to the space, or people who are looking for what I'm hoping we're giving is a very clear communications. People who want the straight scoop as to what's going on in this space. And Kim, you're someone that I've long trusted to be able to talk plainly to people. The first topic we're going to come to is mapping today. Then we're going to talk about mapping, and that's actually 3 different ways. And then we're going to talk about local organizing around digital equity. And we're going to have, that's going to be a little bit of a shorter topic compared to the mapping. And we're going to wrap up with the affordable communication. What is it? Oh, ACP. I just call it ACP all the time. Affordable Communications Plan?
No, it's Affordable Care Program.
Connectivity program. Thank you, Rye.
Connectivity.
Oh,
we're really winning today. We're really winning. Really winning.
Yeah,
Starting off strong.
I want to put my best foot forward, and I just put it in my mouth instead. The Affordable Connectivity Program, which we'll talk a little bit about, but the team here on the Community Broadband Networks team at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance has a really great dashboard that tracks that. So, Kim, you and I have talked a lot about mapping. Let's start by just setting the table briefly with what was going on there, and then we're going to talk about a cool tool that will help with mapping. And the way I'll often start is to say that in order to put $42.5 billion into better broadband, the federal government wants to know where that broadband is. In order to know where it is, it has to know where what buildings should have it. And so, typically we might say a chicken house may not need the fiber connection to it. That's kind of the responsibility of the ag producer. But the ag producer's home on that plot of land would need a fiber to it. But if they have a grain leg or something like that, that would not be a place, or a shed in a residential area would not be a place to deliver internet access to.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you're being discriminatory against chickens, but sometimes they might need internet access as well. But the crux of the situation, it starts with a map, right? We need to understand where broadband is. And I think the federal government and the FCC started off the whole mapping, what we call the mapping debacle that has turned out to be, with really good intentions. I think it has taken a sour note over the past few months, if you will. And I know that ILSR has published a lot of articles regarding some of the mapping, and I don't know if you want to go into some of the challenges that we've seen and what it is to do to get to the next level.
Yes, exactly. I want to talk at the high level just to make sure people have this understanding. And then we're going to talk about a tool that's going to be helpful in helping to correct some of the errors on the maps. But the FCC has developed a proprietary contract with a company called CostQuest. And there's been some good reporting that suggests that may not have been the best path, but that is where we are. And right now we're in a situation in which there are two things to worry about. One is whether the fabric, which describes where all the locations are in the United States, all the businesses and all the residences are that should have internet access, and are they correctly listed? So, are there single family homes or apartment buildings or business locations that are not on that map? Or are there businesses or residents on the map that actually are phantoms and don't really exist? So that's the fabric challenge, and that's been going on. And then at the same time, we've been doing availability challenges, which is to say, does the map properly describe the amount of internet access available at that location? And so there are, I would say, bordering on tens of millions of errors in the map. I mean, maybe it's only 12, 15 million errors, but it looks to us like when you look at what the states are finding, there are a lot of problems. And so we've been frustrated because the FCC, I think, has not been clear, and NTIA has not been clear about what can be fixed in time for the BEAD allocations. But the BEAD allocations will happen this summer with the maps that are basically available. And we can talk more about that in the future if people would like, but we have an article that is in the chat will be very soon, that explains where that's at and whatnot. And people can ask us questions after we show this video coming up here, then we could answer that. We can also talk more about the tool that we're about to demo. But when you're a local government or, like an activist who would like to see the maps be accurately depicted, there's a cool tool. And Kim, you haven't seen this video, so we'll get your honest reaction to it afterward. It's a really cool program called Tailor, and it will help to identify potential errors in the map. So with that, I think, Rye, you can roll this video, and then we'll talk about it briefly afterwards and see if there's any questions that have popped up.
Hi, Robert. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm super excited to talk with you about your new software, Tailor, and help other folks understand what it is and what they can do with it. So first,
thank you so much for having me, Christine. Good to be here.
Yes, absolutely. So I wanted to start off by asking why you created Taylor.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Taylor came out of this moment, which I'm sure a lot of folks in the room remember late last year, as the FCC was asking us to participate in this unprecedented broadband mapping movement. And really the ask was to take a look at these draft versions of the new broadband maps and take a proverbial red marker to them and say, you know, where are there locations missing? Where are there broadband serviceable locations that maybe should not be serviceable, et cetera. And I think there were a lot of questions around that. How do we go about something at large scale, especially if you're a big city or something like that? How do you find where those gaps are and where the inaccuracies may be? And so Taylor is a tool for taking data that exists in your own jurisdiction, such as tax parcels, address points, building footprints, things like that, and using those to put them side by side against the fabric and try to find any potential issues.
That is very cool. And so I guess my next question is, who do you have in mind as an end user for this kind of a tool, and what kind of things do you think that they can get out of this? What would they necessarily use it for?
That's a great question. I would say that anyone who sort of has digital equity and representation in mind, I think is really kind of part of the main ethos of Taylor, is making sure that the map reflects the lived experience of people who are trying to sign up for consumer broadband, especially, but just making sure. So I'm thinking about state governments, local governments, and also tribes, any entity that has a constituent base that should be on this map. This is a tool for you.
Awesome. And are there any particular skills that people need to have in order to use it?
Another great question. I would say that if you are comfortable using your computer's command line, you should be good. There are a couple of software packages you have to install prior to installing Taylor, but there's documentation on how to do that. You don't need to know how to write code. That's a question I've gotten quite a bit. No coding skills needed, just need to be able to open up that command line and fire off some commands.
Awesome. Well, I think without any further ado, would you mind giving us a little demo of what Taylor can do?
So this here is the Taylor code base. Once again, no need to go through the code itself, but this is where the documentation for Taylor lives. This is on a site called GitHub. I can post this link in chat or share with folks after the fact. But this here has just some background on what Taylor is, what it does, and how you might be able to source some of that ground truth data. So say you don't have a copy of tax parcels at the ready, you may be surprised that it exists as open data on the internet. So there are some ways that you can get started with your data collecting, finally installing, and then how to use Taylor. And so this is where the documentation lives. And just want to point out, there's also a Discord server if you need help getting started with Taylor. That's something else I can post a link to. So that's that. And then I can give a quick preview of what Taylor looks like when you use it. So I'm going to open my computer's command line. So I have typed in Taylor here, and that prints out this main command. This tells you different things that you can do with Taylor. And so a lot of this is focused on loading your data in. And one thing I'll point out is that all of this data stays on your machine. So if you have any concerns about, obviously the fabric has a license that, you know, you probably want to keep this data to yourself. This is all running just on your machine. So you're loading in the BSLs or the fabric. You're loading in a few other things, as I mentioned, parcels, buildings, addresses. And also, if you have a boundary of the area that you're working in, that can be really helpful too, just for refining your analysis. And finally, what you're going to want to do is run this command, Taylor analyze. And that's what's going to take all that data, kind of overlay it and look for the gaps and inaccuracies that could be potential fabric challenges. And I will hop on over to what the results of that look like. So when you run that analyze command, it's going to output 3 data sets for you. And so I'm going to open my GIS software here. I forgot to mention, having some GIS skills is also pretty important to using Taylor, whether you come from an Esri background or an open source. I'm using free and open source QGIS here. But just being able to open GIS data and sort of look through it is another important thing. So I'm going to show here, these are the 3 data sets I mentioned. So first, what Taylor does is it looks at the parcels that you've uploaded. and it makes sure that there is a fabric location on top of every parcel. Now, obviously, not every parcel needs a fabric location. There may be some false positives in here, but I found that this can be a really good way to find, especially in residential areas, fabric locations that might be missing. So when I turn this layer on, you'll see that any parcel that is shaded in red here is one that's missing a fabric location. One quick thing I want to point out, I'm not actually working with a real copy of the fabric here. I've made a dummy data set, which is based on addresses in Chicago where we're running through this demo. But this does represent some of the patterns that I have seen in the actual fabric. So kind of a simulation, if you will. So if we zoom into an area, let's go to the North Lawndale neighborhood, you'll see that these parcels have been shaded in red. And then if you go ahead and turn on, this is our fake fabric layer, you'll see that there is indeed a dot missing over those addresses. That's somewhere you might want to submit a location challenge. And then I will show you the two other layers that Taylor outputs. So it also analyzes your fabric points. I'll zoom out here. Let's turn these off. So I've applied a filter here. What Taylor does is it adds a column to your fabric data set, which has a flag that says if it's a known address or not. And what that means is, as Taylor is running through the fabric, if it comes across an address that doesn't exist in your address point data set, whether those are 911 address points or some other source that you found, it will flag those. And so these are, in fact, if we click on these, you'll see the address here in our fake data set has a 0 for the house number. And so that's likely something you want to look into, potentially submit a challenge for. And if you zoom out, you can see sort of at a city level, sometimes there can be more of these than expected. And finally, we'll move on to what are called address match lines. And so what this is doing is Taylor is drawing lines between your fabric points, and it's matching to your address points. And so normally, in most scenarios, you would expect these to be on top of each other. That's kind of a best case scenario. However, due to just mapping and data quality issues, there may be cases where they are not that close. And this is what they would look like. Again, just sort of a sample of issues that I created here. But this, I would say, is reflective of things I've seen in the actual fabric. Let's turn on our fabric and address points. So if we compare Chicago address points to the fabric, we'll see here, this has 1235 South Millard, and so does this fabric point, but they're obviously at very different locations. So this is a case that you may want to review and submit a challenge for. Unfortunately, Taylor can't tell you which is right and which is wrong. So there is an element of kind of scanning these before you submit your challenges. Finally, this is another pattern that I've seen in some places is where say the addresses on the north side of a street get flipped with the addresses on the south side. And so you end up with this sort of stitching pattern. And so I would note that these are, I would say, smaller lines. I've also seen lines in some places where they stretch across the entire city. And so these sort of can range in terms of severity. But so that kind of rounds out, those are the three products that come out of Taylor and hopefully are useful in sort of seeding those bulk challenge, fabric challenges.
Excellent, thank you. And now we have Robert and Christine. And just to note something that I clipped out of the video. By the way, the videos are, that one was better because Christine was involved with it. But the next two videos, I did the linear editing on, so not super professional in the same way. So anyway, the software does not do the challenges automatically. It just gives you information on what areas you want to look at in order to do those challenges. Kim, did you have any questions?
First of all, Chris, I am not one who can hide my emotions. So I am just, first of all, impressed. But second of all, I think it just puts how big this really is for communities to actually tackle to challenge any of these fabric locations, right? Who would really go through this if they didn't have the software like that has been created? Because that would just be tedious and you would never get anything done. So kudos, but I do have one question for you, is that I know some communities who have no land use codes. And for whatever reason, they don't have land use codes. How would you tackle that with something like this software? Can it happen, or do you need some information such as land use codes?
That's a great question. That can be helpful, especially in sort of refining your search for residential addresses. And I think finding those small businesses that are stipulated as part of the fabric can be a challenge as well. I've tried to, in sort of the analysis I did leading up to Taylor, I tried pulling in zoning for the city of Chicago, and found that it did help to sort of refine my search and kind of draw my eye to where there may be more homes, and you would expect more of a guarantee that there should be a fabric point there. I'd say that it is optional. They can be very helpful, but not a deal breaker if you don't have those land use codes.
And I'm curious what you see in terms of more rural areas. I think that in terms of errors per population, it seems like they are greater in rural areas than in Chicago, for instance, or other more urban areas.
That's a fantastic question. I just sort of based on the jurisdictions that I've worked with, those have mostly been in urban areas. So I'll admit that I haven't really personally kicked the tires on Taylor in more rural areas, but would be really curious to see what that turns up. And as was mentioned earlier, there's a Discord server where you can share your findings, and would love to help folks on that journey as well in other parts of the country.
I do have one question. I live in Utah, and Utah is infamous for having two names for every street. So there is like 700 South, 400 East, but then it also could be Smith Street. And when you were looking at some of the errors, would those be some of the things that could be caught, or depending on how it's registered, how would those errors kind of be taken into account?
That's a great question. So as of right now, the address matching in Taylor is fairly basic. What it does is it strips out, some of you may have seen they're like building suffixes on a lot of the fabric points and things like that. And it'll take a pass at trying to standardize them as best it can, also removing like extra spaces, things like that. But the address standardization currently isn't robust to where you could pick up those sort of duplicate or alternate street names, but definitely something, if that's helpful for folks, and can definitely see the utility in that. Would love to hear about it, whether it's on the Discord server or folks can reach out to me directly. I'll put my email in the chat.
And then, Christine, I have one last question for you, and people should feel free to put questions in the chat. We will have some time at the end to come back to those as well, but we're very happy to adjust on the fly with live questions. Or you could put questions in Twitter, or I believe our colleague Masto Sean is on Mastodon as well, monitoring the B4DE hashtag. But Christine, for those who haven't been involved in GIS in the past, do you want to say a word? Because I have experience of trying to learn it as a layperson, and I don't know if you have any suggestions on where people can go to like start getting up on this or find data sets or things like that.
That's a really good question. So like Robert is using an open source software, QGIS or QGIS, and that's one option people can look into to use for free. There are lots of tutorials out there. Google Earth is another example that reads some commonly used GIS type files, and that is also free to use. So there are a couple options that are really good to kind of like get your feet wet and don't cost anything to get started. There are really good resources out there nowadays. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you both. We're gonna move on in the agenda, but that was a terrific interview, and I'm really excited to see that software deployed. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I would like to say, Chris, that Christine is so dedicated to her job. She had maps in the background. She loves maps so much that she has maps on her wall. I appreciate that kind of dedication.
Oh yeah. There's no faking it with us. We get the real experts. Christine's been wonderful to work with. We are going to move on to mapping in California, where this will kind of bring us into the next topic, where we have a twofer. We have two short videos that Shayna England has recorded for us. And the first one I'll set up briefly by noting that it's about, this is pretty recent development in California, in that the California Public Utilities Commission was tasked with developing priority areas for areas that are the highest priority for state funding to get better internet access. And the map didn't quite come out the way I think people expected. And although this is a story about California, Kim, I think you'll find it resonates. And I think our everyone who's watching have lessons that they can draw from this in terms of things to watch out for locally.
I'm Shayna England. I'm the director of the Digital Equity Initiative at the California Community Foundation, and a lead in the Digital Equity LA Coalition of more than 40 organizations working across sectors to advance systems change solutions to the digital divide across the county. And I am talking to you right now about maps, and in particular, a really problematic map. And that is the California Public Utilities Commission Priority Areas Map. And so background, what this map is the California Public Utilities Commission was tasked with identifying priority areas for how to best maximize $2 billion in last mile funding to make the biggest impact on the digital divide. And the CPUC took up that charge and decided they were going to do that by pulling in both traditional pieces of data, location served, ISP data around where they say they provide service and at what levels. And also in the PUC's initial direction to create this map, they were also going to include crowdsourced data and adoption data and subscriber data and equity data to try to arrive at, again, priority areas that if public dollars were spent in building out networks in these areas, that would have the biggest impact on the digital divide. Instead, what they came up with was this. And hopefully you are seeing a map that has a bunch of color-coded spots. Each of these different color-coded spots is a priority area. Now, if you aren't from California or aren't super familiar with all of these different areas, you might note the number of priority areas that are in, say, coastal communities. Or if you zoom into the Los Angeles region, you'll notice that Malibu and Calabasas and Rancho Palos Verdes are priority areas. And I don't think I need to tell anybody that the Kardashians probably don't need the help. But that pattern actually is true across most of the state, where you have priority areas either entirely or mostly include communities that under any reasonable screen wouldn't make the cut for where we should be spending public dollars to close the digital divide. And another version of this map that I think helps illustrate the issue. So this is a map zooming in again on LA County. The green areas are the priority areas, and the shades of red are a heat map of the percentage of households by census tract that don't have fixed broadband at home. And what's immediately striking is the lack of overlap there. We have a lot of priority areas that include very few communities that are disconnected. And so the question is, how did this happen, and what should folks be aware of and be on the lookout for in their communities? And I think it's twofold. One is that in the interest, I think, of probably saving time, what the CPUC did was they really only included that ISP location level and service level data. So they went out and said, we're going to identify the unserved locations, and that's the only screen we're going to do. And then secondly, they looked at it and they actually partnered with CostQuest to develop analysis of a business model for each of these. So instead of producing a map that is these are the areas that could most use public investment to solve the digital divide, they emerged with a map that says, this is where ISPs say they do or don't provide service. And these are the areas that an ISP could best make money by serving in this way, which again, doesn't actually get to the problem that they were really charged with solving. And so I think it's going to be on equity advocates and all of us really who think it's important that this public money gets spent in ways that will in fact close the digital divide in a systemic way, kind of pay attention to this and argue for different ways and for different kinds of data to be included in these analyses, whether it's an equity screen or it's an analysis that includes, census data around who isn't actually served. There's a wide variety of different screens that you can use to get closer to the truth than just where do ISPs say they provide service, and where can other ISPs make money by serving? So that's our cautionary tale from California.
Well, Kim,
Not
we've
surprising.
had Shayna on the Connect This show in order to talk about that, but seeing those maps, was that striking once again?
It's not striking. I mean, it goes back to the mapping is the first part of it. Do ISPs over or under report because they don't want competition in their areas? Yes. So you're going from that model. The second, when Shayna starts talking about that what makes the best business sense for ISPs, that's not the government's responsibility to do, in my opinion. Yes, I think ISPs need to make money and they need to have operational efficiencies, but it's not up to them to like line the pockets of ISPs. So I think it's personally, and I think California is pursuing this as well, is putting the middle mile into some of these areas so ISPs can get there and they can make their own business cases for that. But no, I don't think it surprises me at all. It's always going to be a problem. These things are never going to be perfect, and because we're never going to get it correct. We hope to one day, but I don't think we've hit that mark yet.
Yeah, and for people that want to watch television all day, we're going to actually talk about this on an episode of Connect This, which is coming up after this show at 3:30, 4:30 Eastern, 3:30 Central. Because Ars Technica has done a wonderful job of documenting many of the ISPs that have overstated their claims. And I think Shayna's description of what went wrong there, I think that the Public Utility Commission was looking, I think, at the wrong data sets, and including the wrong data sets is important when we're actually trying to figure out like what areas need the most investment. And the idea that the state should be focusing resources on golf courses and the wealthiest homes of Southern California, clearly something's gone wrong.
Yeah, there's something that's gone wrong. And I'm going to play devil's advocate on some of that data. In some of those very rich areas, very affluent areas, they're also a heavy, population that isn't so affluent who tend to be like in some of the wineries and some of those places who work in those kind of nature businesses. So there is some people who might not be connected in those areas, not just only the affluent people. And I think there are two sides, because I've done a lot of research on some of those counties and some of those areas, and there is I don't know how to say it, but not as affluent population in there as well. But there's nothing as compared to LA in some aspects. No.
Because now that you're the face of fiber optics, you're going to move there. I'm assuming that's why you're doing the research.
No, I think Utah is good. I do like skiing. I mean, I'm probably not going to go fly back since the All-Star weekend's in Salt Lake City this weekend.
Right.
NBA All-Stars.
Rye's going to give us the hook if we don't get the next video up. So then,
okay. Let's go, Rye. Let's go.
The next video, we're going to have Shayna on to answer questions about either video if people want to put them in the chat or send them out on a hashtag. But the next video is also Shayna England, and Shayna's talking more about the work she's been doing in Southern California with a lot of local groups to build a digital equity coalition, and I think really great advice for others who would like to do the same.
Hello again, and we're back. Lessons learned around building a successful digital equity coalition. I think there are myriad, and we could talk about this for hours. But I'll summarize in a few ways. One is start with a very clear, accessible, and consistent mission, vision, and value statement. So for Digital Equity LA, our mission is equitable access to fast, reliable, and affordable broadband for every Angelino. Our vision to get there is a sustained cross-sectoral movement with the knowledge, cohesion, resources, and power to win the politics and policy to secure the investments and solutions needed to meet the mission. And our values, and this is really important because our values are really the things that we get to engage with every day. And that is, we build and fight for community-rooted solutions, systemic solutions, localized control and leadership, broadband as a utility, not a consumer or luxury good, and also that we do this work as whole, safe, and healthy people. So acknowledging that it's hard work, it takes a long time, there will be setbacks, and that we need to support each other in order to be able to have the sustainability to continue to do the work. And so I think that's kind of the first big thing. And I think some of the other pieces do, you'll see how they flow from that. The other, I think a second one really is this kind of cross-sectoral piece. So we have very deliberately not built a digital equity movement that is rooted in organizations that had been doing digital equity work solely. Our coalition is built around organizations that have been doing the work of delivering services and building power in communities across a whole range of issues: education and healthcare and immigration and climate justice and housing justice, just to name a few. And what all of these organizations kind of come together in this digital work and around this digital equity work is, one, we're centering equity, we are centering power building, and we're really coming together to say, in order to meet all of our core missions around equity and justice, the digital divide has been a barrier. And it is only by working together on that can we solve it, so that we can all, again, kind of really focus on core missions. And so I think that's really important. And then the third thing that I think probably goes unsaid, but I find I often have to say it, is be relentlessly political. I think that is one of the ways that kind of as a movement, digital equity has fallen short over a long period of time, which is, this is fundamentally a political question. This is decided where resources are going to go and where the focus is going to be and who's going to get served is fundamentally the result of political processes. And the big ISPs understand that, their associations understand that. They address this as the political problem that it is. And to be a successful digital equity coalition right now, I think we all need to do that as well. And so we have politics and power kind of at the center of the work that we do as well. And I think that a harder question is, when will you know that you've succeeded? Have you won? And I think a few things, sitting from a place where I would say, we have had wins, but we have not won. We have not met our mission yet as a coalition. But I think the signs that we are winning are severalfold. One is we have grown very, very quickly in terms of just folks even reaching out to us and asking to join the coalition. Two, we have been able to act and move very quickly because we have that strong base of sort of shared mission, vision, values. We have a shared approach on the power and politics, and we have that kind of shared sense of urgency that comes with that. And so we've been able to move quickly, and we have been able to notch wins. And I think those are evidence that we're building a successful coalition, even if we're not done with the work yet. And then the third thing is, do you start to see kind of organic ideas and work and kind of internal coalitions and partnerships that didn't exist before start to come to fruition? And that has been, I think, some of the most interesting and exciting part of the work. And the piece that at least I personally take as the best sign of success is that we have organizations working together on things like, building out training curriculum for students and parents in schools. And we have sort of other subgroups that are thinking about, how to organize essentially advocacy days with their city council members across a whole range of cities. And they're working together to figure that out in ways that they had not before. And so three ways that I'm taking signs of success. Again, we haven't won yet, but I think there are signs that we're going about it in a way that we might.
Excellent. And we have Shayna trying to reach us on I believe, a mobile connection. California, not known for having great mobile connections. And hopefully we'll be able to help us answer some questions. Rye, are you able to promote Shayna up? I'm here in the backstage. Kim, how did you react to that while we're figuring that out? Kim, we cannot hear you because your microphone's not on.
Well, I mean, that is just a tech error. We haven't been doing remote stuff for very long. But anyway, I think Shayna's right. I think one of the key points that I got out of here is you have to play in the sandbox in which the other telcos are playing in. And I think that's some political. I think it's about how do you operationalize this and go from there. So I think Shayna is right on of the approaches of how do you build these coalitions in your own community.
Excellent. Shayna, does it, if you're able to hear us, and I think you are, how does it feel to be reporting from a place that's almost certainly reported on a map as having great internet access?
Well, it feels not surprising because we all know that the map says one thing and reality says another.
How do you know that, Shayna? That's not true.
So Kim, I'll go first on this one. I'll say, Shayna, I find it really interesting that you worked with these groups that were delivering services that didn't have this history of being active in digital advocacy around digital equity. What did you learn along doing that? I mean, was it difficult to get those groups to engage? Did they feel like you were trying to pull them off their mission? Like, how did that work?
No, and I think that was because we were very, very explicit about we're not trying to pull you off your mission, right? So even just as funders, we were very clear. All of the grants were general operating grants. It was about building capacity to think about this issue as part of your existing and core work. So we had no expectation and never asked, and we're very explicit about not wanting organizations to like stand up a digital equity program. It was more about addressing what they told us was a barrier to progress for their core mission around the digital divide and how to do that together and in a way that could be solved systemically.
We have a question in the chat, but Kim, did you want to go first, and then I'll pose that one?
No, I like the question in the chat right now. I would like to go to there. I think that's something I would kind of like to hear Shayna's.
Anita asks, where do you find a champion in a community that doesn't realize how important digital equity is?
Well, I think the key actually for us has been not approaching it, kind of ironically, not approaching it as is digital equity important to you? But so in the very, very early days, and really the way that California Community Foundation got involved in this issue at all was really kind of a listening tour of grantees and partners and saying, as we look to, this was early 2021, and it was as we look to hopefully coming out of the pandemic, what are the things that we should be looking at to ensure kind of just recovery and a better new normal than the old normal we hopefully are leaving behind. And organizations said things like, we had immigration attorneys and organizations that provide legal services to immigrants saying things like, well, it's been horrible because we have some of our clients are being deported or getting jail time because they fail to show up to hearings, but it's because those hearings were online and our clients didn't have access to devices or to fast enough internet speed to participate. They never once used the words digital divide or digital equity, but what they were describing was in fact a digital equity challenge. And that was true kind of across pretty much every sector that we work with outside of maybe education. And so I think the way we went about it was by kind of not requiring use of the movement language, but by really acknowledging the actual kind of lived experience and how they experienced a challenge. And then only then bringing in the actually, like, this is a problem that you had. This is a problem that your partners fighting for equity over here in housing had. This is a problem that healthcare and community clinics had. And a way to talk about that is digital equity, and let's build some shared language around it so we can do shared work around it. So we kind of went about it by starting where folks were instead of where the language of folks who are already doing this work really is.
Excellent. Shayna, would you be open to if people want to reach out to talk to you about how they should talk to a local foundation about getting some lessons from this?
Absolutely. All day, every day. You know it, Chris. Given my connectivity, I'm going to count on you to pop my email and the URL for Digital Equity LA into the chat.
Excellent. We will get that in. And thank you so much, Shayna. It's been wonderful hearing from you. Thank you for doing the videos for us.
Thank you, and apologies for my connectivity issues.
Well, I know someone that's working to fix them in California, so we're all good.
Perfect. Thanks all.
So our final segment, and we're still open to questions about anything, that we'll have a couple of minutes at the very end, as long as our next guest doesn't go on forever and ever and ever and ever. Just a great shock. I can see your shocked expression right now, but y'all can't. We're going to talk about the Affordable Connectivity Program. And we at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, my colleagues developed a wonderful dashboard tracking it. So if people aren't familiar with ACP Dashboard.com, I highly recommend checking that out to get a sense of where some of the numbers are and things like that. And we have a version 2 coming soon. So, but our next guest is Abby Waldrop, who I know from doing just amazing work with us on tribal broadband boot camps. Abby's with the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. She's a hardcore fan of Sky Miles and North Carolina. So, Abby, why don't you tell us about ACP and what's going on with that lately?
All true things. Although the last time I presented with Chris, he told me I was talking too fast. Now you're just gonna have to decide if you want me to go short or talk.
No, I rudely grabbed the mic from you and told you were talking too fast. It was brutal.
Yeah. It was a shocking moment.
Next time, Abby just hit him with the mic when he grabs it from you.
It was pretty close. I was pretty surprised when it happened. ACP, so the Affordable Connectivity Program, is a federal subsidy program that provides a $30 discount in most places on home internet subscription for households that qualify. That discount goes up to $75 on tribal lands. It's administered by USAC, the Universal Services Administrative Company, and through oversight with the FCC, which is the Federal Communications Commission. So now I've covered my abbreviations. I can use them now. We have a low estimate of how many people might be qualified for this program based on one qualifying factor, which is income. If folks, households make 200% of the federal poverty guideline or lower, they qualify. We can figure out what that number is. And we know based on that estimate that less than half the households that are qualified that way are enrolled. So a lot of people who would qualify are not taking advantage of the program right now. And we know that many more people might qualify through programs like Veterans Pension or free and reduced school lunch. So it's a low estimate. We know that the percentage of the discounts that are being used on mobile connectivity is relatively high, but that number is going down, or that percentage is going down. That might be because the early enrollments through Lifeline providers, because it uses similar mechanisms to Lifeline. So it's very easy to sign up for ACP when it came out through your Lifeline provider. So that might be one reason that mobile enrollments were kind of high. There's also a device credit that's available, but because it can only be applied to a very low cost device that is provided by an ISP where a customer has an ACP discount, it isn't very accessible. We really don't think this is a solution for devices. It's not working well for people, so it's probably not the best long-term solution for devices, so that may need to come from something else. Because the program is so new, it's kind of hard for us to guess why enrollments are high in certain places, or in other places people aren't taking advantage of it. One reason for enrollment may be awareness. Areas where they have more outreach efforts might be seeing higher enrollment. From the start of ACP, the most prominent outreach efforts were coming from two places: those mobile internet resellers who are very experienced with Lifeline that I referred to earlier, and from nonprofits who are engaged in digital inclusion work. And we know that the FCC is increasing these efforts to raise awareness through different grant programs, the outreach grant programs that came out recently, and we're waiting to hear who received those. But we do believe that people who learn about the program and receive support in their application from those nonprofit digital inclusion organizations will receive more complete and unbiased information about all their options, so they can choose to apply their ACP discount to the option that works best for them, that they think fits their needs, rather than from just one ISP. So we think that those outreach efforts are very important and very effective. They're also really important because the enrollment process can be difficult. The application isn't simple for everyone. We know there's a high number of applications for ACP that are started and then abandoned and never completed. And there are a high number of households that are approved for ACP. They complete their application and are approved, but they never go on to apply that discount to internet subscription. So that's why so many digital inclusion programs and digital navigators have invested in understanding the ins and outs of ACP and provide one-on-one support for individuals who are applying. So establishing this program and building the awareness of it isn't really enough. People really need that human element to be able to take advantage of programs like this, and then get the other things they need, like learn skills once they get connected to the internet and learn how to use it. We would really love for the process to be easier so people don't need quite so much help from a digital navigator. So we're hopeful that the FCC will engage with digital navigators who are providing feedback on how they can make that happen. And another important thing to know is that this was funded, the ACP program was funded by the Consolidated Appropriations Act with a set amount of money, which is $14 billion-ish, and around $4 billion has been spent so far. So based on various projections that you can see in that link that Chris was referring to earlier on their great dashboard, that there are some projections that maybe in mid 2024 at some point the funds will run out if no additional funds are designated for the program. The good news is that digital inclusion practitioners, like those who are affiliates of NDIA and internet service providers, tend to agree on this, that this program is valuable and needs to continue. And we don't always agree on everything. So it's important that this is one that we agree on. So we're hopeful that there may be some good news there. So long-term funding for this might come from modernizing the Universal Service Fund, modernizing where that comes from and how it is used. But that would take time. So there's also a need for short-term funding, maybe a couple of years that would be helpful to have time to do that.
Abby, I think talk of modernizing the Universal Service Fund has been occurring for most of your life.
Yeah. So maybe a couple of years then we can get it done.
Yes.
Hope.
So
Always believe, Abby. Always believe.
so I'll let Kim do the first to start grilling Abby.
No, I think she's right. I mean, I don't think there's anything that Abby said. I think one of where I've seen ACP uptick is in where providers are marketing it. And I think that is one of the flaws of the ACP program when it was launched, is that they didn't give any incentive for providers to market this program. So I think you are seeing it to slowly trickle out into more communities, but it has been a slower rollout than I thought it would be. I think now I am seeing providers who are a little skeptical if they should jump on board and start providing this because of where's the funding going to come in next, right? Should they go through the process of going through the headache if the funding runs out? And I think we all believe that it will be there will be more funding allocated for this program, but you just never know. So I think those are just my commentary, Mr. Christopher.
No, I would say that my certainty about anything with this Congress is at an all-time low for any Congress in terms of being able to predict likely outcomes. I will note that we have the dashboard. I'll just show people what it looks like on acpdashboard.com. On the upper right there is what we're talking about, which is our modeling for when we think the money will run out. And I think pretty much everyone agrees it'll probably be in 2024. The more people we sign up, the more quickly it will run out without new funding being put into it. But on ACP Dashboard, you can find a bunch of stuff. You can drill down into the map to different zip codes and things like that. Abby, I'm curious, the FCC, I think two things they're doing right now that's relevant. One is they were in the middle of them getting ready to hand out grants to people to do work of signing people up. And the other is I think they're going to do like a PR campaign around it. Is that right?
I think they might be. I don't really know enough about that because it's new information. And as I told Chris, I'm the fourth most qualified on the NDIA staff. So I would have to confer with my colleagues on the PR campaign, but I know that the outreach grants are something we're excited about because these people who are going to be getting these grants have probably been doing this work without any funding for it, trying to get people signed up because it's important to their mission. So we are excited to find out where those grants are going and how they can implement those to magnify their efforts that they've already been doing.
Well, fourth most at NDIA means top 10 still in the nation. So you got that going for you. We're going to close out there then. Abby, thank you so much for being part of this rapid fire discussion. For people that want to know more or just to see Abby, I hope you've already signed up for Net Inclusion. We're all going to be there in 2 weeks, 10 days, a week and a half. It's going to be great in San Antonio. And if you haven't signed up yet, you probably missed the boat. But one can beg and try to maybe find a scalper on the day of.
I like that idea. A scalper at our conference would be really interesting.
It's going to be wonderful. Thank you so much, Abby. Kim, did you learn anything today?
I always learn something when I'm with you, Chris. I think I love hearing the different perspectives. and hearing what the great work that's that's happening around the country. I thought watching the mapping, I hadn't even seen that at all, and I liked to see how communities could really challenge or start working to challenge what's happening out there. I mean, we know they can't challenge it, but at least know what they can challenge at this point, and go from there. But no, it was a great show. I thank you for letting me be here.
Excellent. Kim, I'm really glad that you were able to come. It's wonderful hosting events with you. I'm looking forward to seeing you live and in person at Net Inclusion, where we'll be hosting an episode of Connect This with Angela Seifer, who founded or co-founded and is executive director for National Digital Inclusion Alliance. We are asking people, we're throwing a survey here in the chat, and would really appreciate it if you would tell us how we are doing. We have a last question here that I'll answer quick. We didn't have any other questions left over, but we do have a question of whether NDIA operates in realms outside of broadband. And I do not believe so. Their hands are so full. And in fact, that's one of the reasons. I mean, it's possible they don't ever want to do anything with me again, but they told me the reason they weren't able to partner on this Building for Digital Equity is because of net inclusion and their workload. So I think they are very interested in getting this stuff right. So, as Kim can attest, there's a lot of stuff going on, and those groups that are working in this area are hard pressed to work outside of this area, unfortunately. I did want to note, while you're filling out that survey, please fill it out. Let us know what went well and what didn't. Uh-oh, there might be a permission issue. Let's we'll hope we get the resolve. I'll say my staff has done a wonderful job of pulling this together. I was in the boat of, we need to get this going. People want to hear information from these experts, and my staff was like, we are not prepared. And I was like, full steam ahead, ramming speed. So anything that went wrong is entirely my fault for pushing too fast. I want to thank Utopia Fiber for sponsoring, and Kim, really appreciate you sponsoring these series. We are going to have more prep and take consideration any concerns that you have in terms of improving event after event. I already have a few ideas of how we can improve events, so we're going to keep doing that. Check out communitynets.org, and we have a newsletter there. We just revamped the website. Rye, who's been producing this behind the scenes, and Sean were instrumental in that. So brand new website, look and feel. And then also, I'll just note, we've been doing these events. We've been doing boot camps, and we bring out fiber samples, and I learn my left from my right, and we talk about how all this stuff works. And so we spend a day with groups to help them understand a little of the history behind broadband, a little bit of the technology issues and stuff like that. And we, we're amazing teachers. We're not as good at setting permissions on Google Forms, but we are amazing teachers when it comes to speaking about this technology in a way that's understandable. And then we surround ourselves with people like Kim that can do the same. So I will be sending an email out to everyone who is on the Eventbrite registry asking for the survey. Please do that when you get it. We'll make sure the permissions issues are fixed by then. But Kim knows that I love it when things go wrong, because it just gives us a chance to laugh at myself. So, Kim, I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day in Arizona. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. We're gonna shut her down then. Take care, everyone.